Okay, so we'll get going. So we finished the fourth chapter last week. Fourth chapter titled Transcendental Knowledge. So just it's just a summary of it. What we did the last chapter, right? So there were four sections to the chapter. Understanding Krishna's position, so accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then how do we apply that knowledge? So trying to align ourselves with Krishna's desires. Then sacrifices. We talked about sacrifices, how to gain transcendental knowledge. There are different sacrifices we talked about. So by those sacrifices, we are acting on behalf of Krishna. So we are working and work off Krishna by grace of Krishna and for Krishna. So that was the concept. And then lastly, so that knowledge will help it liberates us, and we can be happy in ourselves. That's the advantage of this. So now the fifth chapter. This is the acronym for the fifth chapter. To date. Okay, and we will go into the more details when we go through this chapter as we move forward. Then next is the sections. Okay. These are the chapter analysis, what we are going to talk about in more detail. So it's this one, the chapter is called Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So if you remember, that chapter 3 was also called Karma Yoga. Okay. Right? This chapter is Karma Sannyasa Yoga, if you read in Sanskrit. So the difference is that the chapter 3 is Karma Yoga in practice. Right? When somebody is practicing Karma Yoga, what happens to that person? Whereas this chapter is more of a Karma Yoga in perfection. Right? What happens to one who has perfected this concept? Okay? So some contents might look similar to chapter 3. Okay. So Arjun, in the fourth chapter, we heard the verses that talked of Shanti, and he was very happy about, okay, Krishna is talking about Shanti, right? The Brahma Nirvanam. But then he was confused that why is Krishna asking for war? Okay, so how can I be peaceful? So Krishna had said in the fourth chapter that a person who is in knowledge doesn't entangle in material activity. So Arjun is asking for further clarification. He was not convinced yet. Right? They say that a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And you can lead a man to wisdom, but you can't make him think. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Right? So what Arjun was still in the mindset was that actually a person who's not yet convinced, we try to do a couple of things. Sometimes we use shastras to justify our desires. So that is one of Arjun's problem. Arjun just doesn't want to fight. So whatever Krishna says, he tries to extract from that something that would favor his desire of not fighting. So when he hears again Krishna saying, oh, peace, he hears him talk about peace, and he say liberation. But then he thinks that how can I get all of that from a war? How can I be peaceful from war? Right? So he keeps on bring back the same question. So this question is something similar to what we also heard in the third chapter, where he was asking the same thing. A Jnana Yogi versus a Karma Yogi. Arjuna was asking a similar question. Right? And but Krishna doesn't get exasperated. He doesn't get he doesn't get angry on Arjuna. That Arjuna, what are you asking the same question again? That gives another trait of Arjuna, of Krishna, that patience. Right? He's patient in giving the message to Arjuna. So something that we can pick up from Krishna, that we should always be patient, because when people come to the process of bhakti, they have been going through a lot in life, and we having been around for a few years, we start thinking that, oh, I'm entitled to guide these people now, and I'm going to teach them, and that, and we don't look at it from their perspective. So Krishna is teaching us also about that we shouldn't get we shouldn't try to become overly scholar, trying to just preach and not think about that other person's situation. That's the challenge. So going back to what Arjun is doing is he's trying to use the knowledge that he's getting from Krishna to justify his own means. He doesn't want to fight, so he wants to figure out something out of what Krishna is teaching him to not fight. Okay, so that is Arjun's problem. So Arjun keeps going back, but Krishna, you said so and so. So that's one part of the story. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing what happens is that when we gain knowledge, and in the beginning, we hear the philosophy that I'm not a soul, I'm not a soul body. We sometimes become hyperactive. If a family member is sick, then we may neglect saying that, oh, you are not this body. We become prematurely advanced in Krishna consciousness. So that's not an ideal platform, right? So that's something also to keep in mind, that we shouldn't become hyperactive. We shouldn't try to justify our own desires through Shastras. We should get the message, what Krishna is trying to give us, in a very practical sense, and to be an ideal platform. Sometimes what happens is that people who come into bhakti, they become so excited about bhakti that they suddenly start to mistreat their own family members, which can lead to problems. Right? There was once a devotee, he was in college. He's a devotee. There was some devotees who went to college to give a class, and once they had given the class, there were a few students who really got excited about it. So just a day or two after the class, one of the persons that attended, he received a call from his mother, and he was really acting very detached, and he's saying that oh, you are not my mother, it's all this material connection. So that really alarmed the mother. So the father, she called the father, and the father got so angry that he went to the college, and he was trying to get hold of the person, of the college authorities, who actually scheduled a class by ISKCON devotees. So we don't neglect family duties, right? So one problem is using Shastra to justify. Second is artificially adopting this philosophy. Right? So Arjun is trying to do somewhat both of them. He's trying to justify that he doesn't want to fight by Shastras, and he's also trying to present that, oh Krishna, you are telling me that I need to be liberated from Nirvana, and I can only get that by going out of here. Why are you trying to involve me in all this nonsense? So he's trying to also artificially adopt the philosophy that he's getting from Krishna. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind. So also another, just let's take a step back and see that how the whole description has been happening. So in chapter 2, we got the knowledge of preliminary knowledge, soul, and its entanglement in the body. Then chapter 3, we did the different rungs of ladder, the karma yoga, karma kanda, and all the way how it goes to bhakti. It was again more of a description of the process, description of the categories, classes, and so on and so forth. In chapter 4, when we came, that Krishna told Arjun that there are so many of sacrificial work, all of that culminates in knowledge, right? So Krishna was in one sense glorifying jnana, and he spoke of action in action in action in action. Karmunapihi bodhavyam bodhavyam chavikarmana. And then he was kind of glorifying renunciation. But then in the 42nd verse, the last verse we read, which was a call for action, Krishna asked Arjun to fight, right? So what is Arjun's understanding up to this point in Bhagavad Gita? He is thinking that renunciation in knowledge, it involves cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activity. That's his wrong understanding. That's what he's got out of what Krishna is telling, because of the two reasons I just mentioned. One, trying to extract a meaning for ourselves to justify our desires, and secondly, trying to become overly philosophical, or over, just overdoing what we are being taught. So because of that, Arjun started thinking that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation of all kinds of work, right? But then he's also confused that if we work in devotional service, then how is the work stopped? I still am working. So work and renunciation appears to be incompatible for Arjun at this point of time. So what is Arjun lacking in knowledge? Arjun is lacking the knowledge that work in full knowledge is non-reactive and is therefore the same as inaction. Okay. So he heard that, we read that fourth chapter, I think it was the 16th verse. Karmana pi bodhavyam, bodhavyam cha vikarmana, akarmana cha bodhavyam. So like he told about what is action, what is inaction, action in inaction, and inaction in action. So so Krishna mentioned that to Arjun, but that confused Arjun. So that's where the whole problem is coming. He's still confused because of the two reasons I mentioned, and that is why the question comes, or this chapter comes in. So when we go to the first verse, you will see that Krishna, or let's just go to the first verse. So Arjun is asking, Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? So the same kind of a question that works. So Krishna is work in devotion or renunciation of work, right? Which is better? It's similar to third chapter. Where was the third chapter first verse was? Let's see what was the verse. Third chapter. So he's asking, why do you want to engage me in ghastly warfare if you think the intelligence is better than fruitive work? This is the first verse of the third chapter. Now the fifth chapter, first verse. You are asking me to renounce work, again you recommend work with devotion. So kind of a similar question. That there is another kind of form of, Krishna has been telling him about it, and he's confused about it. So Krishna will answer Arjun's question and will explain the process of achieving liberation through karma yoga in a greater depth than he did in chapter 3. So understand that chapter 3 and 5 might sound similar, but the contents might look similar, but the depth is very different, both of them. Right? So the content might seem, I might have a slide here. Yes. So this is the differences between chapter 3 and chapter 5. Just put it there. And I won't go into the detail. They talk about other following verses 5, but just to give you a hint of it, that in chapter 3, verses were, that the person is still undergoing purification. If we don't practice karma yoga, we'll be forced to act on a material platform. I would act as pretenders. We should not disturb others. So how does a person who's practicing this process of karma yoga, how does he or she behave? So what does the practice look like? Don't disturb others, set an example, avoid lust, follow Vedas, those are the things. But in this chapter, you will see all what is perfection. So there will be verses where we'll see that a self-realized soul lives like a lotus. Okay. And there's a famous verse that comes in the, I think it's the 18th verse of this chapter. What's that? Brahmana gava hastini sunichaiva supakecha pandita samadarshina. That a person who's self-realized, he sees everybody is samadarshina. He sees as same. A dog, a cat, an elephant, a brahmana, a shudra. He sees all of them with the same vision. So he's already a perfected being. So that's where the difference lies in both the chapters. So I just wanted to spend some time and clarify this, that it shouldn't be that we think that it was kind of a similar question that Arjun is asking. It is contents are similar, but the depth is very different. Okay. Let's see what do we have. Okay. So let's go to so that's the first verse. But okay. So in the sections here. So the first to 6 is about renunciation versus devotion, and Krishna will say that yes, there are two things, but then work in devotion is much easier. Okay. Then 7 to 12 would be how to act in Krishna consciousness, Karma Yoga. Right? So key line is Sangam Tyaktva Atma Siddhi. So give up material attachment and act for purification. And then 18 to 20, no, 13 to 19 is how any actions being performed. So there are 3 doers that will be talked about at 13 to 17. 3 doers. So who are the 3 doers? This is Jiva, there is Prakriti, and there is Bhagavan, Ishwar. So when we say an action is performed, who is performing it? So that's an interesting subject that we'll go through in this chapter. But who is the actual performer of this action? Right? And then the next section is equal vision. That a person who has understood Karma Yoga, then he has equal vision. And then lastly, Krishna will give an introduction for the next chapter, Ashtanga Yoga. So there will be a preview of Ashtanga Yoga in 2 verses. But then the last verse of this chapter, once again, Krishna will say that Krishna consciousness is better. He'll say that, right? The last verses are going out of my mind. Brahma Bhuta Prasanna. No, sorry. Okay, I'm remember the last verse. But what he says is that Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, that Krishna is the Suhridam of Sarva Bhutanam, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, and that he's the proprietor of all what that's created. And Gyatva Mag Shanti Rachati. One who gets to know that, he becomes peaceful. So a preview of Ashtanga Yoga, and then Krishna consciousness is best. So you have to also keep in mind that, and I might have brought this out earlier also, that Bhagavad Gita is not just meant for Bhakti Yoga practitioners like us. Krishna, being a very merciful father to all the living entities, he wants to present a philosophy that anybody can pick and use. That is why he doesn't blatantly denounce any of the yoga practices. So you'll see that there's a chapter dedicated to Ashtanga Yoga, which is the 6th chapter. But then Krishna makes it sure that he doesn't miss out on the essence of Bhagavad Gita at any chapter. You'll see the 5th chapter, the last verse. The 6th chapter, even though it's about Ashtanga Yoga, Krishna will mention in the last verse that, Atma Pena Sarvatra Samam Pashyati Arjuna. That a devotee, a person who's practicing, who's a true Krishna conscious practitioner, he becomes very compassionate. And he's a true yogi. And so forth. You see it in every chapter. And because so Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 sections. So the first 6 chapters, they're talking about karma. The next 6 chapters are about bhakti. And the last 6 chapters are about jnana. So that is why in this section, you wouldn't see Krishna being very, very clear about Bhakti Yoga. But when you come to the middle section, 7th chapter to 12th chapter, then you'll notice that Krishna is very clearly telling how Bhakti is to be. So Krishna has to also take care of people who are not yet on the path of Bhakti. So he'll keep telling them that, okay, you can do this, you can do that, but try to understand that Bhakti is the highest principle. But if you are still practicing these yogas, do it in this way. If you're doing sacrifices, do sacrifices with the consciousness of the Supreme, so on and so forth. So Krishna will keep trying to bring all of them to the essence, but in a very, very gentle way. He doesn't want them to run away, because generally what happens is that if you overload somebody with knowledge or with something that they cannot yet digest and imbibe, they will probably give up everything. So that's something that we all might have come across, especially with kids. So if you want them to learn something, and if you push them too much, they just leave that thing completely. So you have to be cautious. So similarly, Krishna being a father, he doesn't want to push anybody to an extreme extent where they just leave the whole process. That is why Krishna is talking about many different forms of yoga across Bhakti, across Bhagavad Gita. Just keep that in mind, because it sometimes might seem that, oh, this doesn't look like Bhakti. Right? So I said, okay. So then, okay, yeah. So equal vision. So he's become liberated. Yeah. So equal vision, the person becomes liberated. That he becomes a Jivan Mukta. That's the word that is being used in the chapter, Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta means that he becomes Mukta or liberated within this body. Right? Some of you might have seen a coconut. When a coconut dries out, the inner part kind of detaches itself from the skin. And when you shake the coconut, you can feel that the inner part is detached. That's what a Jivan Mukta is like, if I have to give you an analogy. He has completely detached himself or herself from all the whatever is surrounding him, even though he's in the same body, he's in the same shell. Okay, right? So that's the state of a Jivan Mukta. And this we talked about. Okay, so the chapter is called Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So if you divide those 3 words in 3 sections, this is the theme of Bhagavad Gita. I've been mentioning this theme, these 3 words that have been coming again and again. Dutiful, detached, and devotional. Right? So dutiful means Swadharma Acharan. You do your duties. That's being dutiful. So what is our duties? We all know, we talked about the 4 varnas and the ashramas, right? So Krishna had told us in the 18th verse of the last chapter, Chaturvarnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhave. That in this world I have created 4 sections. Guna Karma Vibhave, on the basis of guna and karma, competence and the qualities that a person has, not on the basis of birth. So there are 4 varnas. There is brahmachari, there is a grahasthashram, there is vanprasth and sannyasashram. Then there are 4, sorry, those are the ashrams. The varna is Brahman, Vaishya, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So the varnas are meant for social structuring. Okay? And ashram is for self-development. We have talked about this. Right? So how does a person, like I'm as a part of this society, how can I interact best with this society and at the same time also develop myself spiritually? So it's Krishna's system. So I can be in the social structure without disturbing myself a lot, by following what is my qualities and what is my competence. If I try to do somebody else's job, even though I don't have the qualities and the competence to do it, I'll live an extremely frustrated life. I'll keep trying to prove myself and I'll not, because I don't have the quality for it. So understanding that varnas and ashrams have a specific role. So once I'm in the right varna for according to the social structure, and I'm living my life according to the ashram I'm in, then my life becomes perfect for spiritual growth. So developing myself socially and personally. Okay, so that's the dutiful part. Okay, that's karma. Then sannyasa, I put the word nirasakta. So nirasakta is there is no asakti. The detached, the person is detached. Okay, no asakti. Or detached, when I say detached, means materially detached. Right. So performing our duties materially, but not be attached to them. So that is the spirit of material detachment, nirasakta, right? But then you also have to understand that just detachment is not enough for us. I can detach myself from something, but then I need to put my mind somewhere else. Otherwise, my mind will be pulled back to what I was doing, I was attached to earlier. So the last part, which is yoga, which is being devotional, is asakti, being attached to Krishna spiritually, and then it works, right? So it is easy to give up material work, right? Okay, but then, for example, if let's say my father has a big business, okay? There are many offices that he owns, there are many factories that he has, and a lot of business in the market, and so on and so forth. I am a dutiful son. I am fully aligned with what my father's desires are, and I'm serving him to the best of my capacity. Automatically, I'll be an heir to whatever he has. Okay. I don't have to sit down with my father and discuss with him that, oh, who's going to be the heir to your business and who will have control of the company, so on and so forth. So son gets what the father has. Okay. And in the in Srimad Bhagavatam also, in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, there's that verse number 8. It's a very famous word, which Brahma quotes, right? And he's saying that, oh my God. When he says that in 10:14:8, he says that when somebody follows the orders of Krishna, and while suffering all the misfortune that is coming his or her way, then he or she eventually becomes heir to the kingdom of God. So it becomes our right to go back home, back to Godhead, when we follow what Krishna is telling us. So devotees get all the powers of Krishna when he is acting appropriately. Prabhupada says this in the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the purports, that by chanting the Lord's holy name, one can derive all these stipulated energies synchronized from all sources. And so that's the main theme of Bhagavad, that we live our lives which is conducive for our spiritual growth. When I live our lives means publicly and also personally. We try to be, by living a life that way, we'll be detached from this world, not overly invested in it. And then when we are detached, whatever time and energy we are going to save, we're going to put it in Krishna's service, right? So, what's that? 10:14:8 Tatya Anukampam Susamikshamano Ujjani Vatra Kritam Vipakam Vidvagva Purubhir Vidudhan Namaste Jivetayo Mukti Pade Sadaya Bhag. Sadaya Bhag means heir to the kingdom of God. So we automatically become heir to the kingdom of God. So this theme I've been talking about again and again. I just wanted to put it again in this chapter before we jump into individual verses. That the whole theme of Bhagavad Gita lies around these 3 Ds. You can always bring back whatever Krishna is teaching in one of these Ds. It could be duty, detachment, or devotion. But then, as I mentioned, at the end of the day, devotion is what we all are looking for. I cannot be happy just by living my life according to the Varna and Ashrama system. I cannot be happy by just being detached from this material world. All that, control and detachment has to be brought forth and being expressed as a love for Krishna. Okay, so understand that. So Krishna will continue to delve in either of the 3. So, and I mentioned the reason that he doesn't want to disturb any other practitioners, but then also wants them to come back to Bhakti, because that's the easiest and the most advantageous process. So he will talk about many things, but then the goal is. So let's see. Let's go to the verses. Okay. Any thoughts before we move forward? Before we jump onto the individual verses?
Krishna Prabhu. So, then you said devotion is what, we're looking for, but, we should still continue to practice being dutiful and detached in our sadhana and in our daily practices.
Yes, we should not give that up. We should not give up those practices unless we have perfected ourselves. And even in the 18th chapter, when we read, Krishna even says that 3 activities even a self-realized soul doesn't give up, which is charity, penance, and sacrifice. So dana, tapa, and so 3 activities even a self-realized soul doesn't give up. Because even I was just talking to my wife this morning, and she was saying that how even when I was discussing another set of devotees, that even in Golok Vrindavan, when you go back home, back to Godhead, still you don't give up some of the prescribed duties. Mother Yashoda also gives charity. When Krishna's mother Yashoda, Vasudev and Nanda Maharaj, they all give charity on Krishna's birthday. Okay, the gopis, they do all sorts of penances to have Krishna as their husband. So all that even continues in the spiritual world. So we don't give up any of these activities, especially in this material world, not at all. No, whimsically, we should never give them up. We have to be perfect beings if we have to. And then Krishna even goes to the next level thing. Even if you're a perfected being, don't give up. Like Prabhupada, right? Prabhupada, he didn't need, he was a pure devotee. He just came to present the message of Krishna. But he also was still doing all that, all those activities. He was performing, he was taking care of his disciples. He was given like his children, and he was doing everything. He was marrying them, and he was guiding them like a father, and so forth. So yeah, we don't give up anything. Actually, there was a verse around that. Was that helpful, Nancy? That's what.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, just you mentioned like, duty and detachment and devotion. So like under the karma, when somebody do the akarma, like, is it not like a detachment itself? Like, under the karma itself, like, people detach once they are not feeling about any reaction of their karma. So what's the difference between like renunciation and the akarma?
So akarma, so there are three things, right? Karma, akarma, and vikarma. Okay, we read in the fourth chapter. So karma is action which are going to bring fruitive results, right? So that's something that we all are doing. Right. Vikarma brings negative actions to our lives, and akarma is there is no reaction to it. So when you say that renunciation, sometimes we renounce something, but down deep my desires are still intense. Superficially, I might seem renounced, but down deep I have desires. So that is considered, that will come under the section of vikarma. Akarma is when I'm just doing everything without any reactions coming back to me, neither good nor bad. Right?
So it's not equivalent to detachment, like, only then practically somebody can do something like that. If suppose somebody is totally detached with the things going around in the environment, right?
So are you talking about the akarma then? Akarma, you mean?
No, I'm talking about the detachment, and under the akarma, if somebody is doing that's kind of karma, right? That falls under the karma categories.
Yes. Yes. So, yes, you're right. That is detachment. That is detachment. As I mentioned, dutiful, detached, and devotional. So but then again, if you're just on a detached level, you cannot stand there for a very long time, because the basic quality of a mind is to be active. And if you're just saying I'm detached for everything, but you're not connecting yourself to Krishna, then that detachment doesn't have much value. But yes, you're right. It would have some amount of detachment also to it, the akarma aspect. But the akarma aspect is that we are not getting any results back, even though we are working. That is because I have given up all the results to Krishna. So detachment doesn't mean that I'm not acting at all.
Any practical example, Prabhuji, like, I cannot correlate. What is the actionless?
Look at Prabhupada, right? So there were many sannyasis or many swamis at the time when Prabhupada was around, who would just say, oh, no, I'm a swami, I'm a sannyasi, I won't touch money. And Prabhupada would jokingly say, oh, you don't touch money, you give all it to me, I'll use it for Krishna's service. So they were acting falsely detached by saying that, oh, we don't touch money, I'm a sannyasi. But Prabhupada was completely detached plus also attached to Krishna. So that was a state of akarma where Prabhupada was saying, even if I use money, I'm going to deal with billions of dollars, but then I won't be attached to anything because I'm using everything for Krishna's service. So that is the true form of renunciation.
I see.
Does that example help, Prabhu?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, that in this case, again, his desire is to expand the Krishna movement, but again, it is in the Krishna service. That's the key.
Yes, you're right. So see, detachment is this. There will be I think in the second verse of this chapter, Prabhupada will quote a verse from Bhakti Sastri BG, where he will specifically talk about this aspect, that how sannyasis, they are outwardly renounced, but inwardly they have a lot of desires. But whereas a person who's practicing Krishna consciousness and he's doing akarma, he doesn't whatever he has is same. He neither has he doesn't have any desires for himself. But then whatever his desires are, they are completely in sync with Krishna for Krishna's service. So it is a renunciation of a level where his mind is fully attached to Krishna. So there is detachment from this material world and full attachment to Krishna. And when he or she is fully attached to Krishna, he can use this material world also for Krishna's service. So that is the true form of renunciation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
And I think it's the second verse. We'll talk a bit more about. There's that verse Prabhupada quotes, and we'll go into that verse and look into more details. Okay. So this was the. I'm not sharing my screen. Just give me 1 second. Can I share my screen? So this is the verse I was mentioning, that where this is coming in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 20, verse number 9. This is Krishna talking to Uddhava. So Krishna is saying that as long as one is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravadam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. So we don't give up whimsically anything. We keep doing our duties, whatever we have been assigned in this material world, and at the same time trying to be devotional to our best of our capacity, Shri Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. And then a time will come when we will know by ourselves that, okay, now I can, leave aside some of these activities, right? And that's where the verse I was saying, 10:14:8 comes in, Brahma speaking. 10:14:8. So this one, 10:14:8. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past deeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, word, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So this is the kind of the quintessence of Bhagavad Gita, of Srimad Bhagavatam. What we are being told by Lord Brahma, we just continue to live our lives with whatever is coming our way. There'll be a lot of suffering coming our way. We see it as our past misdeeds. But still, we keep offering our obeisances to Krishna. We continue with our process, chanting, reading, all these service. We just keep doing that, irrespective of whatever is coming our way. Right? And then we are eagerly waiting for Krishna to bestow his causeless mercy upon us. This is not something that I can just raise my hand and pluck. It has to come from Krishna. So I just keep eagerly waiting for it. But at the same time, I'm going through whatever this life is giving me and keeping my heart, word, and body for Krishna's service. Then I'll surely be liberated at the end of this life. So there's nothing fancy. Don't try to do anything fancy. Don't try to be more how do you say that? Don't be more Catholic than the Pope. Whatever we've been given a very simple process. Just follow it sincerely, and it will then Golok Vrindavan will become a rightful claim. That the doors of Golok Vrindavan will be open when we leave this body for us. So just already share these couple of verses that establish the essence of what we're going to discuss.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
Prabhuji, so you mentioned, right, that we are supposed to do our prescribed duty, keeping Krishna in the center, right? Whatever time you get apart from your regular duty, you should invest in devotional service. So there are so many instances, right? We see so many Prabhujis and so many other Maharaj, for example, they sometimes like they are at the prime of their career or their prime of their family life, and they just renounce everything and just they take sannyas. So is this the correct route to take? Because Krishna never says leave up to means when you have invested so much time in studying and all, then and you get a good career, but at one point of your time you just leave everything. When the time comes to take care of your parents and all, you just leave everything and take sannyas because that is where your mind takes, your heart takes you. But is it correct, Prabhuji, then in that case? Because Krishna never advocates that.
Yeah, so that's something that a good acharya can do. So an acharya can tell. For example, this question comes many times that Shastras have said that in Kali Yuga, nobody should get sannyas. And then we have Prabhupada giving sannyas to 20-year-old, some 20-year-old boys. Why was that? So Prabhupada had a purpose behind it. The reason Prabhupada was giving sannyas because he had to put forward this movement for Krishna's service. So a guru can, an acharya can decide what is right and wrong at this point, but I cannot decide. If I just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to take sannyas, and my wife and my son, they can figure out themselves, they can take care of the mortgage. That is not something what Krishna would appreciate. So something an acharya can define, because acharya is fully in sync with Krishna's orders. Prabhupada fully knew what Krishna wanted. He wants the movement to be spread across the world. Prabhupada had to go through a lot. People would, there were newspapers publishing nonsense about him. There were court cases against him that he was brainwashing children.
Yes.
But he went through everything. But because he knew what was right for in Krishna's service, he could do that. But if I whimsically try to do it myself, that is not appropriate. So there is a difference that who is telling me to do that aspect, like taking sannyas or giving up my family life, whatever it may be. I cannot define that, but a guru can tell me that.
Got it.
Because the guru is self-realized and he's a transparent medium for Krishna's message. Right? Just like when you, for example, let's say somebody's working in a factory, a manufacturing factory or something, they're manufacturing something, right? I cannot define when the machine is going to stop or start, or at what speed I'm going to run it at, or how much production is going to happen today. But the manager on that floor can come and tell me, okay, you have to stop the machine now. You have to increase the speed now. Okay. So like, for example, the guidelines might say that no worker can increase the speed of the machine beyond, let's say, 100 RPM or something of that sort. Or the no worker is supposed to produce more than 100 units of this X thing that he's producing. Well, then a manager can come and change those. But the worker by themselves cannot do that. So that's something that we have to keep in mind.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
And you will notice, I'll mention this, as I was saying to also, that in the second verse, there is this good description that Prabhupada gives of what is Vairagya. What does renunciation actually mean? Prabhupada will talk about that in detail. Because this first 6 verses will revolve around renunciation. But yeah, that was the essence. Yes, we should not try to do it ourselves. But if there is a higher call, for example, Prabhupada was a family man. He was married, he had kids, a wife, business to take care of. But his Guru Maharaj would come in his dreams and tell him to take sannyas. First time Prabhupada's Guru came in his dreams and told him, Prabhupada just was scared. He said, I don't know what is Guru Maharaj telling me to do. Right? So first time he just completely ignored it. He said, no, this is just my mind creating something that I have to take sannyas. But then again in his dream, his Guru Maharaj came and told him, Abhīṣṭa-dohaṁ, please go immediately take sannyas. And this time he really became serious. Prabhupada said, okay, this is happening second time. There must be something that my Guru Maharaj is trying to say to me. Then he started consulting with his god brothers who were senior to him, who were sannyasis. And then one of them, when he consulted with a few, and there was one, Keshav, I think it was Keshav Goswami Maharaj. One of him whom Prabhupada had faith upon, he told him, you should immediately take sannyas. And Prabhupada immediately took sannyas. But by his own desire, he was not going to take sannyas. But coming from a higher authority, Prabhupada did it. So sometimes Krishna also asked his loved ones to do things that a common man wouldn't do that. Arjuna is being asked to kill his own family members. So when it comes from a higher source, then we should not think. That's where, towards the end of the 4th chapter, we read there's samshaya atmana, that a person who's in the who's filled with doubts, that person can never kind of move ahead. So those, doubts, yes. So yeah, so because I am filled with doubts, and that's why my knowledge is incomplete. But then a person who's self-realized, he's at a level where he or she can guide people, the followers, that okay, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. Okay. Let's go back to the next. Okay, so let's start discussing the verses. Let's get into the verses. So the first is the question, talked about it. You asked me to renounce work. Then again, you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? So Prabhupada clearly kicks off, work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. And okay, one more thing I was thinking of bringing this. So I've talked about this earlier also. This first section of Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters, are not necessarily focused on bhakti. Okay, when you read Prabhupada's purport, you'll clearly see that he's bringing everything back to bhakti. Wherever the word yoga comes, Prabhupada will say this is bhakti. But that might not necessarily be Krishna's focus. So there is a reason why Prabhupada does that. Because Prabhupada could understand that the current nature in Kali Yuga is such that people have very limited focus and attention. What he wanted to do was, if anybody picks up his Bhagavad Gita and reads even one page of it, one verse of it, immediately the person will know what is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. When we come in the later chapters, you'll see that Krishna himself is trying to establish bhakti. What Prabhupada has done is, he's doing it right from the beginning. So I just want to bring this back out. Like for example, there's this use of Buddhi Yoga, and Prabhupada is translating it as devotional service. So many scholars used to criticize Prabhupada for this aspect, that you have even brought Krishna where Krishna is not there, or sorry, where bhakti is not there. Even Krishna is not bringing bhakti. And Prabhupada would very sarcastically reply back, telling them that you removed Krishna from even where he is, so I have to bring Krishna where he's not. So kind of, but then, as I was saying, because Prabhupada is an authorized, a pure devotee coming through the lineage, he can do this. Right? But then, if somebody who's just a scholar trying to do his PhD on Bhagavad Gita, he will never understand what the essence of Bhagavad Gita is. And he can criticize Prabhupada as much as he wants. It doesn't matter. But just because Prabhupada is he's a pure devotee, he's following Krishna's message, so he can do that. So keep this in mind. Somebody might even ask you and present this as a question that, why does Prabhupada always talk about devotional service, whereas Krishna is not talking about it? This is the reason. Prabhupada wanted to give the essence of Bhagavad Gita at every page for the misdirected civilization that we are living in, so that even if somebody reads one page, they get what Bhagavad Gita is all about. Okay, so the first is the question, whether to renounce work or whether to work in devotion. And Prabhupada is saying that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. So, and the devotional service is easier than latter because, being transcendental in nature, it frees from reaction. It frees one from reactions. Right? So it frees one from the reactions of this material life. So that's the reason, right? So as we talked in the last chapter, that this knowledge liberates us, and we can be happy within. Okay, so we become transcendental. And it frees one from reactions because we are giving everything for Krishna's service. So we are redirecting all our reactions to Krishna. And because Krishna is unlimited, he can absorb anybody's reactions, but I cannot. So if I have to suffer reactions, whether it's good or bad, I'll have to come back to this material world. But if I offer everything to Krishna, then there's nothing in my account. I just wipe my slate when I'm going back. So that's the essence that Prabhupada is highlighting here. Second verse. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work. Yes, please.
What is this Buddhi Yoga?
So the word Buddhi Yoga is used differently across Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So Buddhi Yoga, Krishna uses it some places as I think for Jnana also. He compares this to Jnana Yoga also. And at some places he uses it for Bhakti Yoga. Was that 10th chapter, there's a verse that comes in Buddhi Yoga. So it can be sometimes be used for karma. I think it's used for, it doesn't refer to any specific process, right? There's no specific system of sadhana called as Buddhi Yoga, right? That we have talked about. There's never that. It's just a compound word used by Lord Krishna in Gita, right? So it just means, as the word itself, you just look at the literal meaning, intelligence used for the purpose of yoga, or yoga performed with intelligence, with the purpose of pursuing higher spiritual connection. So the word Buddhi Yoga can be used for anything. So if you are using everything, let's say you're doing some karma, you're doing some activity, but you are using it for a higher spiritual, trying to make a higher spiritual connection through that karmic activity, then your karma also becomes Buddhi Yoga. Right? So it can mean many different things, right? I think we read this in the second chapter. There was a verse in the second chapter, 10th. Tesham satata yuktana bhajata priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam. So the 10th chapter, 10th verse, the word Buddhi Yoga comes. In there, it's referring to Bhakti Yoga. Okay. And in the 18th chapter, there's another verse. I can't remember the verse which one it is. Buddhi Yoga Upashrita. So there also, Buddhi Yoga is referring to Bhakti Yoga, where Krishna is asking him to renounce everything and make Krishna the goal. So the word Buddhi Yoga can be used differently. In the second chapter, there was also one verse in second chapter where Krishna uses the word Buddhi Yoga, but there the word Buddhi Yoga was used for Karma Yoga. So it can be different meanings at different places. And that's something we have to keep our attentions up, because there are many words across Bhagavad Gita which are used for different purposes. The word Atma can mean self, can mean soul, and even Paramatma can be supreme. Similarly, the word Brahman can have different meanings. It could be a person who's a Brahman. It could be the spiritual, or the impersonal aspect. So there are few words across Bhagavad Gita that Krishna uses can have very different meanings. So we should know what context it's supposed to be used in. So there are 3 verses I mentioned to you, and I hope I get the numbers right. 10.10 in Bhagavad Gita, 18.57. There the word Buddhi Yoga means Bhakti. Then second chapter, there is a verse, I think it's 39 or 40 at one of them, where the word Buddhi Yoga means Karma Yoga. So it's used differently in different places. That's why I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Was there somebody else saying something? No? Okay. So then, okay, so this was the first verse we did. Then the personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So once again, you notice this, how Krishna is doing it. Krishna is a very, he's a charismatic teacher. He doesn't want to denounce anything outright. Right? He's saying that some people renounce work. So they are doing sannyas, right? This karma sannyas. The phrase that is being used here is karma sannyas. So karma sannyas, the word itself is self-explanatory, that they're giving up the karma. Right? And then he's saying that he's not just completely trashing that. He's not saying that, oh, that's wrong. He says, fine, you're talking about renunciation of work, but even if you renounce work in the right mindset, that can also bring you to me. That path is surely going to be very, very hard than the devotional path, but still you can come to me by that. But if you're just going to ask me which one is better, I'll clearly tell you Bhakti is better. So as I was saying, right, so many people in this world, some are just entangled on the karma level. Some are trying to just be speculators, trying to understand Krishna through speculation, trying to understand this whole creation through speculation. Some are sitting down and meditating. People go to mountains and live in caves and so on and so forth. All sorts of people. Krishna is never rejecting anyone outright. He says, fine, you want to do this, but bring me somewhere into the picture somewhere. So similarly, Krishna here is not denouncing the renunciation of work, but he's saying that devotional service is better than renunciation. Okay. Okay, and Prabhupada brings out these very good verses coming from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. Rishabdev, who's an incarnation of Krishna, has, he talks these 3 words. Okay. So Krishna is saying that karma yoga, bhakti, as Prabhupada is translating as bhakti, and karma sannyas both prevent attachment. Okay. So they prevent attachment to this material world. Okay. So point of Bhagavad Gita is that one should ensure that one not be bound to this material existence. And from that perspective, both of them are doing this activity, right? But among them, karma yoga is better because it is easier to execute. And Prabhupada, in this purport, he is going to focus on fact that we should avoid karmic bondage. Right? And Prabhupada is quoting all these verses from Rishabdev from the 5th canto. Right? So we have to continue our work till we understand our true identity. I showed that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 20, verse number 9, where Krishna himself is saying that you don't give up your activities. And Prabhupada quotes this verse 5.5.4, and he starts with Nunam Pramatta Kurute Vikarma. Right? So what he's saying, he's starting with Nunam Pramatta Kurute Vikarma, that everybody is performing insane activities for sense enjoyment. Right? So Vikarma is sense enjoyment, so those are negative activities. Everybody is doing that. Right? Yad Indriya Priti Apanoti. So why is one performing these activities? Indriya Priti. Too much urge to satisfy the senses without a higher taste. That's the biggest problem. Because I don't have a higher taste, I'm trying to look for the taste within these urges of my senses. And the more I dig deeper, then the more entrapped I get. There is this cartoon, like somewhere in the 70s. It's about a tar baby. If you see, there's a short clip of tar baby. Short clip I've seen on YouTube many times. There was a rabbit, and I think there was a fox. So the rabbit would always outsmart the fox. So the fox was jealous of him. So what the fox does is that he takes tar, right? Tar, by which you make the roads, He makes a baby out of the tar, and he puts him by the side of the road. And the rabbit comes, and he tries to strike a communication with the tar baby, and the tar baby doesn't respond, and the rabbit gets angry, and he punches the tar. Because it's tar, his hand gets stuck in it. Then he punches with the other hand. His other hand gets stuck. Then with the legs. And then after a minute, he's completely entrapped. Same way as us, with all of us, that when we try to get too involved in this material world, try to solve things by ourselves, more entrapped we get into it. So, Indriya Priti Apanoti. That I'm just intense urge to satisfy my desires. Na sadhu manne yat atmanoyam. So Rishabdev is saying that I do not consider these very sadhu. Why? Asan api klesha da asha. Asha deho. Right? Because this body is misery, is a source of misery and can give us unlimited pain. And because I'm trying to satisfy my senses, I'm getting all these unlimited pain and miseries. So that is why I'm not a very sadhu person. He's saying that who's doing these activities is not a very sadhu person, not a very smart person. This material body is designed for pain. When we are young, everything looks perfect. But then as we grow old, we start seeing that how our body is giving up one after the other. We are not that, our stamina goes down, and our body, I don't have to go into details, you all know what's going on. So this body is not designed for enjoyment, but we never realize that, right? And this body gives us pain, so it's meant for pain. So that's what he's saying. And then parabhavas tavat abhoda jata. You will defeat the mission of life if you do this, right? If you do this with karmic activity, right? Yavan na jigyasta atma tattvavan. If you do not, yavan na jigyasata atma tattvam, right? If you do not inquire into the soul, about the soul, right? Yavat kriyas tavat idam manovai. Right? As long as you continue material work, your mind will be tainted with karma mentality. So karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. Mind that is bound to material will assure repeated birth. So what Rishabh Dev is explaining, because of my insatiable desires, my indriya priti, and no higher taste, because I've never inquired into the soul, I'll keep on cycling in this birth and death. I'll keep on going in this cycle again and again. I'll never be able to come out of it. Right? So what is the solution? Evam mana karma vasham prayukte. Right? So having got such a mind, avidyatmani upadhyamane, avidyatmani upadhyamane, avidya, that I've been, because of my avidya, I've been getting this such a mind and a body. So what do I do now? Upadhyamane, I'll start meditating on spiritual truths. Priti na yavan mai vasudeva. So as long as I don't develop love for Vasudeva, Krishna, I'll not be freed from this deha yoga. So it's saying, na muchyate deha yoga tavat. So he's giving a one-pointed answer that how do you get out of this repeated cycle of birth and death is by focusing your attention on Vasudeva. Priti na yavan, by developing love for Krishna. Right? So the point of this discussion is to develop, or these verses Prabhupada is bringing out, is to develop yukta vairagya. And I think Prabhupada will bring that out again. Before we go to yukta. Therefore, jnana, or knowledge that one is not this material body, but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. So Krishna gave us this knowledge in the second chapter. You're not a body, you're a soul. Okay. He talked about many different sacrifices in the fourth chapter. He talked about the ladder of yoga we talked about. Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, and all that. We went up all to Kevala Bhakti. We talked about that. Also, all that knowledge that we have, all that we have read till now, is not of much value if it doesn't have the love for Vasudeva. That's what the essence comes out. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruitive platform. So all the bhakti processes that we are doing, all the charity that you do, you give money, you give hard-earned money for books, you invest your time, money, books, other things also. But you invest your hard-earned, your efforts. You physically go to the temple, you do services, you invest your time. Every morning, every day, you chant, you read, you hear. All that is leading to the purification of your heart. Any activity in bhakti that we do is not meant for anybody else other than me. Right? I'm not going and serving the temple because the temple has to give me back something. No, I'm going there because it purifies my heart. So that is the whole purpose. And the more we do it, the more we come out of this conditioned life. And you can physically see it. You'll see those changes in your life. You'll see how there's a verse which says that, very good analogy, that when we keep practicing bhakti, these material desires and urges, they start becoming like a toothless snake. Even though the snake might be biting you, but there will be no effect of it because we have purified ourselves. So even though you might be going through all the things that you have done in the past, but because now you are purified, those things I don't have a negative effect on us anymore. We'll be living our lives the same way, going to the same office, meeting the same people at work, getting the same pay. Everything would be same. But because of the purification, I've become detached from it. It doesn't affect me anymore. So that's what happens as we go forward. Okay, this is the verse I was talking about. Prabhupada quotes this. Prapanchikataya buddhaya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubhi parityago vairagyam phalgu kathyate. When a person eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete. So Prabhupada brought this out, and the word used here is vairagya, right? Yukta vairagya. Engaging appropriately for its purpose without attachment. Okay. So there are two types of vairagya. Okay. Phalgu vairagya and Yukta Vairagya as being told. So this verse that Prabhupada is quoting, there is a verse before this, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatharam Upayanjita Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagya Uchyate. Yuktam Vairagya. So when somebody knows exactly how to use everything for Krishna's service, that is called Yukta Vairagya. And in this verse, Krishna, the author of Bhakti Sastri BG, he is mentioning this is Falgu Vairagya. So Vairagya is a very interesting word. Sanskrit by itself is a very interesting language. So the word Vairagya means Vigat Raga. So Vigata means give up. So Vairagya means you have given up attachment for materialism, right? And Vairagya can also mean Vishesh Rupa Raga. So you are exclusively attached to Krishna. So Vairagya can mean both things, detachment also and spiritual attachment also. So they both are complementary. They go hand in hand. And then there's a word that's being used here. It's called Falgu. So what is Falgu Vairagya? Interestingly, the word Falgu comes from a river in Bihar. Some of you might have heard of it. It's in Gaya. Falgu means, so this is river who throughout the year looks dry. Okay, the river is dry. But if you just push your hand to across the sand, you will see there is water running under the surface. Okay, so that's the word. That's the meaning of the word Falgu, right? So externally, a person looks renounced, but internally, lot of desires. Right? You scratch a bit, and then that ahankar, everything comes out immediately. Right? There was once a person who would come and roll in the temple, cry a lot, and he was so expressive of his feelings, and as if he's the most renounced person in the world, and he would just roll in front of the deities, and it was a bit of a distraction for the devotees and for the other people coming to the temple. So they asked Prabhupada, what should we do about it? So Prabhupada jokingly said, the next time he comes, we just kick him. When he's rolling on the ground, just gently kick him. And if he gets angry, then this is Falgu Vairagya. He's just trying to show up, right? And so this is Falgu Vairagya. So we don't do that. That is not what is being ascribed to us. So that is why Krishna is saying renunciation. Don't renounce. Don't renounce out of whim and fantasy. Renunciation, that if you do that, that is Falgu Vairagya. Be Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya means you know exactly how to use everything for Krishna's service. So we read that example, right, in the Nectar of Instruction, in the second verse. There is an example of a person finding a $100 bill on the street. Anybody remembers what are the three options that we discussed in that? What we can do if we find a $100 bill on the road?
See the $100 bill and just ignore it and go by. The second
Yes,
the second I think so was take the $100 bill and take it and use it for yourself. And I think so the third option was take the $100 bill and try to look for the person whose that bill belongs to.
Yes, perfect. Oh, that's amazing. You remember that. That's very good. Yes. So first is keep it for ourselves, or just leave it on the road, or return it to the owner. So the first one is keeping it to ourselves means that's bhoga. That's I'm enjoying it. Once again, material desire. Leaving it on the road is tyaga. That's renunciation. Right? So, but then returning to the owner is yukta vairagya. That is the appropriate way of using that the $100 bill that we found on the street. Right? So yes, those different categories, but the best is Yukta Vairagya, which Rupa Goswami is telling us through these verses. Prabhupada is quoting them. Right? And Vairagya is not something that we work towards. It's a natural result of bhakti. Remember that. So the Vairagya, this renunciation that Krishna is talking about here, we don't have to endeavor for it separately. It automatically comes in bhakti. Vasudeva Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoga Pariyojita, Janayat Yashu Vairagyam, Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam. Right? So one man practices, but this is coming from the first canto and second chapter of Bhagavatam. It's the 7th verse of Bhagavatam. And what that means is that when we approach Krishna, Vasudeva Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoga, when by bhakti we approach Krishna, when we practice bhakti and we approach Krishna, then jnana and vairagya, both of them come simultaneously. Right? So yeah, so that's something. So we don't have to separately endeavor for this renunciation. It automatically comes. It's already a part of an element of the bhakti. Obviously, Krishna is not talking about the renunciation that we do on a daily basis. Some amount of renunciation is anyways needed on a daily basis. Even to practice our bhakti, we need some amount of renunciation. Some amount of detachment is needed, right? To follow the 4 regulative principles, live a moral and spiritual life. All of us, we control our senses. Obviously, we all are fond of eating, but then we control our senses and no, we're not going to eat outside food anymore. So there is some amount of renunciation in all our work, but we don't make that as our prime essence of our bhakti process. That's not the topmost priority for us. It automatically comes. But yes, there is some amount of renunciation needed while we are in this sadhaka bhakta stage, neophyte stage. Right? For us, vairagya in the grihastha ashram, all of us are in grihastha ashram, following the 4 regulative principles and not getting caught up in materialistic pursuits so much that we don't have time for bhakti. For us, that is vairagya. Okay, so that is the level of our vairagya, for grihastha's vairagya. So don't try to over endeavor from vairagya perspective. It automatically will come to us. Okay. And there are many examples in our movement where we have to intelligently use this principle of vairagya. Okay. There's this Mafatlal, right? You all must have Rishikesh Mafatlal. Mafatlal is a big industrialist in India, but he's an initiated devotee also in ISKCON. He's the owner of the Mafatlal Industries, right? So for him, vairagya might mean a very different thing than me. Okay, I cannot expect such a big industrialist to live in a two-bedroom apartment like me. Okay. So for him, his vairagya will be different. So if he starts living in a 2-bedroom apartment, then that would impede his services, right? Because by the qualities that have been endowed on him by Krishna, that he is intelligent, that he can run a big business and have relationships and network accordingly. If he pulls himself away from that, he will not be able to. That might significantly impede his services, because he can use everything in Krishna's service. So for him, vairagya might have a different meaning. So sometimes devotees, as I was saying, right, we don't artificially try to present ourselves as vairagis, right? Somebody who was telling me the other day. Oh yeah, we were in a meeting, right? The temples, and this devotee was telling us that ISKCON Juhu is on one of the top 10 attractions of Mumbai, and the Facebook page of ISKCON Juhu has more followers than Amitabh Bachchan, who's a superstar, as we all know. So ISKCON has to, the temple has to present itself in a way. But if the temple says, "Oh no, we are all about devotional practices. We don't have to maintain such a, maintain a temple so extravagantly and in such a fashion," then people won't come to the temple. Prabhupada also used to say that for me, I can just sit under a tree and do my bhakti. But I need to attract the people of this world to bhakti. I have to make these opulent temples. Otherwise, they won't come to bhakti. So a pure devotee is always thinking about that. So what I'm trying to give by all these examples is that vairagya is different for different people. As a grihastha, a general standard vairagya is our regulative principles, and then not being overly invested in this material world. So those are a couple of things for us to keep in mind. So by doing this sort of vairagya, we can gradually move towards decreasing the time and energy we spend in this material world and have more and more time for Krishna. Right? So that's the meaning here. Let's see. Okay, that's it. Pronunciation. Let's do the third. Okay, we are ready. Let's finish the first 6. So that's the first section. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. O mighty armed Arjuna. Okay. So why karma sannyas is better? So this particular verse is talking about renunciation in action, right? The person neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activity. Right? Na bhala na mandha. He's not saying, oh, this is good, this is bad. No, everything can be used for Krishna's service. The good, bad is only when I look at it from a material perspective. But then everything can be used for Krishna's service. Okay? So renunciation in action, not renunciation of action. So because we fruits of his activities, yeah. So he neither desires nor hates. So it's not like that the person wants to just no, this is all. I'm not going to take any fruits of my activities. If needed, that's also okay. The more important thing is to be active in service of Krishna. So we become happy because activity is natural for us. Inactivity, though externally seems easy, but mentally the passion makes it very difficult. Our desires go wild. As a soul, we are all active, right? So Prabhupada is saying the purport is that. There's no. Okay, there's no duality. So the question that can come is that what does it mean that the person neither hates nor desires? Because whatever he does for Krishna. That is why all those dualities go away. Right? So if everything is for Krishna, many a times people think, for example, if I tell you personally about my life, I would never go out on the street and approach people by myself. I'm an introvert by nature. But then we go for book distribution and we talk to whomever we see. So something that my heart is just not at all desiring for. He said, no, I cannot do that. I cannot go on the street. I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed. I feel, how am I going to do it? But then if done for Krishna, everything just goes away. There's no good or bad anymore because everything is for Krishna's service. So the duality goes away. Because I'm performing it for Krishna's service, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether, how the person who's approaching me thinks about me. All that it just becomes immaterial. And just by being freed from this platform of dualities, then the person becomes liberated. That's what Prabhupada is saying. Right? He's liberated. Being thus freed from the platform of duality is liberated, even in this material world. So we become immediately liberated, even in this material world. So, how does working for Krishna help us to get rid of dualities? Because the devotee then doesn't look for good or bad from material perspective. I gave you an example about book distribution. You can see it for others. Sometimes if somebody tells you, right, that, oh, you have to go into clean dishes, go to wash dishes somewhere. Some people might look down upon, no, washing dishes, no, I don't wash dishes. But when it comes to Krishna service, we're doing everything. I know very, very elevated devotees, many senior devotees. I've seen them clean toilets. Okay? There was this incident which I heard from a devotee that how once Radhanath Maharaj was he was in a temple and it came under his purview or something, and he was just inspecting the temple, or was it some other side? But he was inspecting that place, and he said, "Okay, I want to use the restroom." So the devotee said, "Yes, Maharaj, your restroom is on that side." Maharaj said, no, I want to see, this is a restroom right here. Why can't I use this? And he opened it and he saw that the restroom was not clean. And he started cleaning it himself. Right? But then obviously the devotees just jumped in. They won't let Maharaj do it. But then the essence is that a pure devotee does not see this is good or this is bad. Cleaning toilets is bad. That's not my job. I don't clean toilets. So for a pure devotee, those considerations go. There's no good or bad from material perspective. He tries to see everything in service of Krishna. So that's the essence of this verse. That there is neither hate nor desire of fruits of activity. So I gave you the example of Maharaj Radhanath, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, that he didn't hate cleaning the toilet. But then he was not as if, oh, I'll get something in return, I'll get some, people will start praising me more because see how humble this person is, he's cleaning a toilet. No, that was not his desire either. So he was seeing everything in service of Krishna. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world. those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. So Sankhya Yoga Pratibha. Okay, so yes, so only an ignorant person, the word being used here is Bala, child. Okay, so an ignorant person is the one who sees these two things as different. Right? So there's the word Sankhya being used here. There's yoga. There's word Sankhya. So Sankhya, Prabhupada is translating analytical study of this material world. Analytical study of this material world. The aim of analytical study of material world is to find the soul of existence. So Sankhya Yoga is the analytical study of matter, of spirit, and the controller of the both. So the process that Sankhya yogis adopt is neti neti. Okay? So if somebody wants to know me, somebody wants to know who's Prem Dham, they don't know who I am. So they're going to go and inspect everything. They might see a donkey and say, oh no, this doesn't look like Prem Dham. They might see a dog. They, oh no, this is not Prem. So they will keep negating everything before they come to me, to Prem Dham. So Sankhya Yoga is very much like finding the root of the tree of material existence. Right? So it's an analysis of elements. So that's Sankhya Yoga. Exact opposite of this is Karma Yoga. Okay? No analytical study is there, but connection through service with the controller of matter and spirit, Krishna. So we connect through spirit, through service. We connect through service with everybody. Okay? We don't find the root, but we water the root. That's it. That's the essence of it. So Bhagavad Gita, so the Sankhya Yoga is analysis, Karma Yoga is synthesis. So Sankhya is, I will understand and then accept. Karma Yoga is, I'll accept and then I will understand. And that too, we all understand. We read scriptures, we discuss this. So we try to understand it. So what Krishna is saying, if you understand that the process of Sankhya Yoga is also to reach Krishna, then Sankhya Yoga is also okay. You can do the analytical part. Obviously, Krishna said in the earlier that it's a very complicated and tough process. But if you want to walk that path, that's okay. You will come to me. But then you have to understand that who I am. So first they will understand that, okay, this world is temporary. See, trees are dying and, I see everything degrading, people are dying, right? But then inside me, there's a desire to live forever. Where is that desire coming from? So there must be somebody who is living forever. So they keep this kind of analytical process, right? But in Bhakti Yoga, we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then we approach Krishna through service. Okay? So we will get fruit by following either one of them, right? So we also do analytical, but we have a purpose for that. So that's it. And there's this verse, right? That comes in the fourth chapter. So let's just come back to it. Yeah. So that's the aim. That to material world is to find the soul of existence, right? Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the super soul. So as I was saying, looking at Krishna through in a service mode or trying to reach Krishna through an analytical mode. So the real student finds the root. But if the student is not real, he's got some ulterior motives, then he's just a speculator, then he will never find the root. He'll never understand who Krishna is. So then that Sankhya Yoga is incomplete. Okay. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. The real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, there is no difference between the conclusions reached by the two process. So understand that only if we realize that the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, then only Sankhya Yoga will lead us to Krishna. Or we understand Krishna is the supreme, then only we will be able to get the ultimate goal. Otherwise, we won't. Because you can be Sankhya Yogi forever, but you will never make any progress in it. So we read in the 4th chapter, there was this verse, right? Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tathaiva bhajamya. And mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. That everyone is following my path in all respects. So yes, all paths take us to Krishna, but we have to understand that connection with Krishna. If that connection is severed, we don't see that connection, we will never be able to reach Krishna through that path. So Krishna is saying Sankhya Yoga can also bring you to me, but you have to understand that I am the goal of that. If you don't understand that, then your process is incomplete. So therefore it is saying Ekam Sankhyam cha Yogam cha. This verse is saying that. Ekam Sankhyam cha Yoga cha. So so let's see what's next. 5.6. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So yes, as I was saying, sannyasa can cause dukkha because the senses need engagement and you're denying them. So ayogataha, there's a verse using here, ayogataha. So ayogata means that you're not connected well. But if one is connected to Krishna, then you will attain spiritual realization even if you are doing sannyasa. Right? So merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service. So detachment is there, but there is no attachment to Krishna, then that will never make us happy. So we are just giving up the renouncing the desires of the senses. That's not going to please us. We have to engage those senses in some other place also. Otherwise, then this sannyasa becomes a troublesome. Right? So we have to become yoga yukta vairagya, that we use everything for the right purpose. Right? So yes, so that's the essential thing. No, okay, yes, this is it. I think from 7, the next section will start. Yeah. Okay, so this is it. So we're already at 8:31. Anybody has any last minute points before we wrap up? No? Okay.